Hey, so maybe the immigration debate, such as it is, it's not a debate, it's more like another, what do they call him? They call him something. Flame wars and circle jerks and stuff. So the immigration debate. It could be that there's one of these things that's never said, but it's always percolating. And I think it's the people who are restrictionist. It's not just about the policies. It's also about attitudes. And I think they want, in a cultural sense, they want to say the people who have been elected, have been selected from the world. You know, there's all these caps on per country. But the people who have been selected and who have come, it's only fair that they show gratitude toward those who have, you know, through their public officials, allowed those kinds of policies to persist, where they got to emigrate into the land of opportunity and live out the, as hokey as it gets used seriously by the Reds, the American dream. They got to live out the American dream. And so the people who allowed for that to happen, the natives, the natives are on a attitudinal level owed debt of gratitude, and they can expect it and they should be entitled to it. And anyone who begrudges them and berates them for feeling entitled because they allowed such policies and they allowed those people to emigrate into their country. See, there's a gratitude component to nativism. It's not just about we want less people, we want less people. We also want to be able to kind of be, you know, celebrated for allowing people from all over the world to come. They owe us a debt of gratitude. And if, whether it's the Progs, who are also the natives, who don't believe anyone's owed a debt of gratitude, who believe it's all roll of the dice. We don't believe it's really all roll of the dice. There's a kind of manifest destiny component to us left. We kind of believe God chose us to be Americans. He chose us to be born. These specific individuals who are born in America, God's steering some of this. Or the natural order, come God, is steering some of this. So the fact that it's not just some luck of the draw. No, we're Americans for a reason. It's a kind of cosmic reason. And so when we allow others who are not born in America to emigrate, they owe us a debt of gratitude. And so Progs are wrong for both not feeling that they're entitled to that debt of gratitude, but Progs are also wrong because, you know, they try to resent us. You know, they try to criticize us. In some cases, it's actually, they view us with contempt. The kind of hoity-toity intellectual ones view us with contempt, kind of the no Avail types. They just have contempt for us. But then there's these other Progs who think us racist for it, and then they come to resent us. So there's these types of different backlashes to what we, you know, some people view it as an intellectual vice. Some people view it as a deep moral vice because they view it as synonymous with racism. But we feel we're entitled to this debt of gratitude. And it should be as, you know, kind of as like the cop saves your life and suddenly you view cops a bit differently because like the cop actually saved your life. So you're maybe not as much of a cop basher because this incidental thing happened where you shouldn't have been targeted in the first place. So it's only fair that the cop saves your life. But say you don't get that. And so you think like we owe the cops as a society a debt of gratitude. We owe the troops as a society a debt of gratitude. This kind of group, it's never said, but let's call them nativists, the immigration restrictionists or restrictivists. They also believe that it's about being owed a debt of gratitude, and they can kind of posture about the fact that they're natives and these immigrants are not. It doesn't mean they have to be mean-spirited, but in these kind of clannish ways, they can posture a bit about how great they are for allowing this. And look at all these other countries that don't allow any such thing. Countries which shall remain nameless for the time being. But yeah, I think I got my main point across, and I'll get into other countries and their, you know, even worse attitudes toward immigration than America. But whenever you hear about people with bad attitudes on immigration, it's the UK and it's America. And it's sometimes increasingly Canada. It's like the natives have a bad attitude. They hate immigrants. It's not that they hate immigrants, it's that they think that, especially with this Palestine thing. And see, now I'm zigzagging. I'm being critical of nativists for having this, you know, failing to see that it's luck of the draw and not God steering things as to why they're Americans. I'm at once critiquing them, but I'm being zigzaggy and I'm saying, like, if you look at the Palestinian levels of kind of third world crappers, what do I call them in a track? Like, you almost kind of feel a touch of sympathy with the natives for, you know, these people are in the third world. They took the steps to emigrate. Clearly, they're not born in the West. Clearly, their English is clearly like a third or fourth language. So they kind of took steps to emigrate and then to stay in the West, and yet they really do seem to hate most of what the West is about. Most. Notably the West's kind of sympathy to Israel instead of all this kind of third worldist projects. And so that's kind of, off the wall levels of entitlement. So I am, in at least one sense, a tad sympathetic to nativism, but I still don't think they're justified in having this kind of thinking that it's not just luck of the draw that they're Americans. And so in that strict sense, just as I don't think we have to pay, cops any kind of homage or troops any kind of homage, because their mentality is why you need protection in the first place, and their servile natures, in part. Just as I don't believe we owe them anything performative or anything deeply felt, likewise, I don't believe that immigrants, strictly speaking, owe the natives anything culturally, any kind of sucking up culturally. And as irrational as the view is, it's still less irrational than what these pro-Palestinian kind of absolutists and river to the sea and truly odious people, what they think they're entitled to, and how nonsensical it is that they choose to stay in the West despite hating most things about it. Or not hating, but being, I think, wrongly critical. They're critical in wrong ways. So yes, they're even worse. So sometimes I kind of understand the nativists, but I don't understand them being egged on and failing to see how they're being egged on by this kind of anxiety demographic porn by way of a tweeter like end wokeness. This is just demo anxiety porn. It's all he does. It's like 99% of what he does. And he's just such a ideological hack, or even partisan hack, because most of this is American. End wokeness. One video, maybe this one video, I'm just logging on and I'm just going on Twitter and I'm just reading all the worst end wokeness takes and rebuking them. Probably not now, though, because this is just a video to point out that there's a deeper thing in the immigration quote-unquote debate / flame war. There's a deeper thing. You can say most people think it's mostly about policies. The policies are the most important thing. We ought to restrict not just the border, but also the flights. We have to have less people flying into America yearly. It's called paced immigration, as opposed to what is by any historical measure. You take a broad view of history, it's like, yes, the UK has had, Douglas Murray is right, the UK has had mass immigration. It's true. America has had mass immigration. Lord knows Canada has had mass immigration. One doesn't have to hate immigrants in order to see that that's a bad idea, right? And so there are these restrictivists, but it's not just about policies. It's about attitudes. They think they're owed something in terms of, just kind of sucking up to them because they're so benevolent, because they let non-Americans and kind of non-Anglos and non-Aryans continue to emigrate to America. Oh, but one thing is certain, and that's my coffee percolating. One thing is certain. The people I just talked about, who I called the nativists, very underused word. You don't need jingoist if you have nativist, but nativists don't necessarily have to be militarist or for the deep state or any of that stuff. Deep state has a long track record of being, kind of team red. National security, God, team red. Most debates about national security 20th century, it was like Hitch versus a bunch of people who were like devoutly on Team Red. Hitch was perceived as left. So the people that get called the far right, it's just so damn incoherent. This is just to say, the people who get called the far right, this is about as blurry as it gets, because the nativists who I just described, who can decline to be kind of cheerleaders for the deep state, but who would have in the past very often been very much for what is now called the deep state. The nativists, America Firsters, they understood, once upon a time, they understood that the deep state took down communism, or, you can say the Soviet Union imploded from within, but, it was kind of Central America sabotage after Central America sabotage. These kind of things over, long enough course of time, these Westernly sabotages in terms of them growing across the globe. The Monroe Doctrine was a deep state project. So once upon a time, the nativists mostly understood you gotta have that deep state. You gotta have kind of isolationist entanglements, or non-isolationist, entanglements. You gotta have adventurist projects and you got to have a military that's very strong because you got to take out the Soviets. But that entails growth of the state. And it certainly entails government doing a lot of things, whereas the economic far right, if you read them right and you don't try to twist them, the further right you go, the more Randian you go in terms of your economic thinking, the fewer things you're going to want the government to do, not just in the economy, but that anything that might impact the economy. So you read the economic far right the right way, and there's no way you're going to see a coherence, any kind of coherence to the term the far right. The further you go along the economic axis into far right, the fewer things you're going to want the government to do, the less of a chance that there's going to be anything like a deep state that combats even a foreign adversary like the Soviet Union. It is only through kind of fusionist hijinks that so many libertarians chose to betray their principles and chose to say, yes, the government can, in these instances, do a lot of things. But in any other domestic conceivable instance, the government should do as few things as possible. But a kind of long-term project of taking down the Soviet Union and stopping communism, then it's permissible. See, the individual ones who went along with it, with fusionism, they had to betray their, in many instances, economic principles, because you also needed high taxation to fund this. But, if the economic far right stays true to its principles, it's what gets called, far right economics or conservative economics. It's going to want the government to do as few things as possible. It's going to be libertarian proper. Many libertarians stopped being libertarian proper when they saw communism was expanding, and they're kind of, let's do some of this deep state stuff. And there's just so many contradictions, and stop using the far right, stop using the far left. Or just tell me along which axis is it far. The economic one, the more it's along the economic one, the less of a nativist the proponent is going to be. You can be both a nativist and a kind of let's overspend on the southern border. Like the principled libertarian has to say, no, let's not overspend on anything. But people like Alex Jones, they just rattle off. Oh, they're targeting the populists, they're targeting the conservatives, they're targeting the patriots, they're targeting the libertarians. It's like, and sorry, my Alex Jones is not stellar. But sorry, it's like, no, Alex, you can't just sneak in the libertarians in that other, clown car, as they call it. You can't just sneak the libertarians in there. The libertarians are more intellectually powered than the rest of those hokey terms. Or at least, the textbook would advise them to be less stirred about internal affairs and kind of, we might lose the culture. No, the libertarians have to be intellectually powered if they stay true to the textbook. So they don't belong with you guys on paper. God, I can't believe it's been 6 years now since this video. Libertarian justice mileage may vary. I love this video. It's been that long. Well, I love the video mostly for its title. It's an okay video. But, well, has there ever been a better dig at an ideology than I did with the title of this video? I'm trying to think of one, and actually, no. Just the kind of, you don't go overboard, but you kind of just tell it how it is. Libertarian justice, mileage may vary. And so, of course, I get curious and I see, can I find it if I just do word for word under the video tab, as I should be able to? Can I find it through a Google search? No. It's very much available on YouTube, right? Hang on, where is it? Libertarian justice, mileage may vary. So it's still an available video, but nowhere. And yeah, why? I want an explanation. Why is it the case with every video? It's not just this video. It's pretty much every video. Why? Can someone explain that to me? I've been doing business with this site 15 and a half years now. Can anyone explain it? No. The way to sum up MAGA just came to me. The way to sum up MAGA with a simple line is when kids are playing on playgrounds and stuff, and one kid's playing with a toy and moves on to another toy, and then another kid comes and plays with that same toy. The kid comes back who had the toy initially. No, that's mine. I had it first. That's MAGA at the national level. Is that kid He's playing with a toy for a while, then he moves on to another toy, and then kid B comes, and then kid A comes. There's just certain kids who are like this. Other kids, they say, well, I'm not playing with that toy anymore. I don't need it as much. If I need it again, maybe I'll ask for it politely. But there's certain other kids who, because they had it first, it's finders keepers, and no, it's mine. And so that's kind of the edifice of MAGA. I think it fits. Tell me if I'm being too rough. I know it's insulting. That's also part of it. But it's also, it's the reason it's insulting is because it's so true. I'd be insulted too if it were true of me. But I guess they can't be insulted. Just like that little kid, when you tell him, hey, stop being so grubby. No, that kid can't be insulted because, well, it's true I had it first. Actually, come to think of it, there's at least a few dozen ways in which I can do this how to summarize MAGA thing. And so I can probably stretch it out to, a few separate videos. So this is not going to be a one-off. This is going to be one of those recurring staples that each video is going to pretend I didn't do this before. Here it was MAGA is mine, but I've had many of these rumbling around in my mind. So, maybe every other video I'm going to return to this. Here's how you summarize MAGA, and fun will be had by all, but primarily me.
A kidney! Turns out I had a spare all along. Took it out with my Swiss Army knife. Had to do it myself because all them doctors is Maoists. You got a point.
I finally put into words the best way to summarize my theory of left and right in use. So my theory of left and right in use, I'll get into the horseshoe crap, but my theory of how people use left and right, finally put into words. It is a subconscious way, this is a kind of subconscious need of discrediting by association, and very much fallacious association, a larger set of ideas than you think you're capable of if you just precisified it. But because you understand it's a subconscious level that you want to discredit this larger set of ideas, but you just don't know if you can do so. And so you just apply terms like the left and the right, instead of being more precise, in kind of socially lazily discrediting one such larger set of ideas that is kind of hassle to debate, so you just want to kind of push it out of existence by relying on this kind of associational guilt. Is that not the best way to summarize left and right in use? What's bugged me most about it is how it's often changed with the times. I think in Bossy Reign is about over, I give it probably the best summary. Talk about how it was used in the French Revolution and how it had nothing to do with how it was used during the golden age of Marxism, as we might call it. But here, I think I found an even better way to discredit it. It is a subconscious need. It is a way to serve a subconscious need that wants to discredit a larger set of ideas than one thinks oneself capable of doing by simply discussing it. I'm not actually outside. I'm on the balcony, and there's a school across the street, but that's okay because I'm out of downtown and no bums and panhandlers talk me up and ultimately ask me for change. No more of that. But I'm in Coquitlam, and I'm across the street from a school, and you're going to hear those kids, even though I'm just on the balcony. But anyway, just to add to that last thing, so all decent people should understand that this should be discouraged. All decent people should remember, even in high-stakes politics, not just talking about local stuff, I mean, even on these federal, national level issues like the border, you should remember that it's not about the left and the right, and especially on the border issue. God, the left changed so much on the border. What's construed as the left and what's used, common parlance, on Twitter especially, as the left. It's like these people think that throughout the whole of the left's history, there's been a bunch of pro-immigration, open border, wishy-washy crap. It's like, no, they were the labor people at the party institutional level. What was the left? Was the labor people who's like, yeah, keep the immigrants out. Whereas the other side was the pro-business community. It was all about the migrants. So it's like, all these people have goldfish memories. But anyway, all decent people should push back against this, and all decent people should be far more curious why you believe what you believe politically, as opposed to the conclusions you've reached. I take this even at the level of Holocaust denial. I don't feel like immediately accusing and just being accusatory and having an antagonistic tone. I don't buy the arguments, broadly speaking, but it's like I'm not. And even if they want to say there's something conspiratorial about it, like I just want to hear them out. I'm not going to judge them. We should hear the reasons. We should be far more interested in in an individual's epistemic journey as opposed to their conclusion. top to bottom, politically speaking, and people can't see it. They might be able to see it, but why would so many of themselves present themselves and show no face of theirs apart from their political face in something like 99% of what they upload? Think of Nathan Robinson, the guy in that stupid, I forget the publication, but it's like he thinks the best way of being a decent human being online, offline, is to constantly show his political flexes and political faces and to spew his political narratives. It's like he's the zealot. Like the zealots will disagree with me in terms of my saying that this is not an analytically useful split. It never really has been. Maybe early on in the French Revolution, but this is continuing to be used. It's a bunch of composition fallacies. It's the zealots who would disagree with me and who would say that no, their subconscious is clean. They don't just use it as a means of discrediting a larger set of ideas that they think they can competently do if they just took their time and went issue by issue, which they never do. So they do a shorthand, a cheat, and just say everything bad is the left or everything bad is the right. And the horseshoe theory also mistakes this as somehow converging. It doesn't converge, because even people who identify with things that are far right can have decent beliefs behind it, can have done decent epistemic work behind it and gathered the correct facts. So even if it's a commie, it's like, even if it's a Holocaust denier, even if it's a commie, I'm going to first hear their reasons and then I will judge them. I'm so much more disinterested in whether it is a far left or a far right or whatever kind of extremist moniker you want to put on it. We should be far more interested in the reasons. But because people worry about that which is dangerous, because they're too embedded in the world, my kind of alternative narrative on this will never take off. People just think that when it's something dangerous, and even if the person has like a history of non-violence, is a non-criminal, but they hold some views which are dangerous, like they're a communist or a Holocaust denier or whatnot, it's like I'm supposed to be just super antagonistic or even just sneering or condescending to them. I'm not. I want to hear why they believe it. And I think it's precisely the zealot. This needs to be the kind of one of the big faces of zealotry, is those people who are just, the moment they hear the conclusion, they reach their judgment. And they kind of even dehumanize the opponent. Because they're just that fearful of their conclusion. Like, I'm not fearful of any conclusions because I'm not a fucking zealot. Political scientists and other kinds of talking heads, they don't really zero in on this facet of zealotry. Is that obsession with the conclusions and with the labels, and that incuriosity as to why you believe it, and the kind of inability to delineate who your real opponents are. Maybe my real opponents are people who just suck at reasoning and justifying what they believe, even if the policy overlaps with mine, or hell, even if their preference for the Constitution overlaps with my preference for my kind of ideal Constitution. Like, if they just suck at understanding why it's a good theory, if they just suck at truly understanding it, they're not my allies. And, people who push different kinds of theories and truly understand it, and even understand mine, but nonetheless ultimately disagree, it's like I'm going to be far more cordial to them. And, maybe they're closer to being allies than the blockheads. Like, where are all the smart people online who understand our enemies are the blockheads, and then what they believe is secondary? And all these people who show you nothing but their political face, you don't know anything else about them. It's like, they think this is the best way of being a decent human online? These are all zealots. I think I'm done. Oh, but critical tidbit on that whole Holocaust denial point. If an institution takes a stance on the Holocaust and denies some major facet of the Holocaust, and the institution is kind of a known quantity, then yes, I absolutely will be judgmental. It's just when an individual who's not affiliated with that institution, like some rando I've never seen before, pops up and says something that denies, ideally a small facet of the Holocaust, but, even if it's a larger facet of it, denies it. But it's some rando I've never seen before, and I go to their channel and they're clearly not pimping for any such known quantity institution. They just did their own research apparently, and that's the view they came down on. First of all, I'm going to be curious. If I hear them out and their reasons are not satisfactory, they don't point me to anything that, in my own research ways that I would find. Then if they don't do any such things, and if they suck, I'm going to be judgmental. But I make the institution asymmetry. That is to say, the institution person asymmetry, or institution individual inquirer asymmetry. I tend to that. I think if everyone tended to that, this would be a much more beautiful world. And not just epistemically, but interpersonally, right? Institutions can be known quantities in ways most people you encounter can't. Most honest, or I guess semi-honest inquirers, no one's an inquiry maximalist. If you were an inquiry maximalist, you wouldn't start families, you wouldn't over-involve yourself in life, you would just scrutinize it from the armchair. But very few people are content with that. People need to be these participants in life. But, I think that still, if you scrutinized institutions harsher when they pushed something like the Holocaust, and you were a little more easygoing and cordial at first, until you hear why they believe it, whatever the horrific thing is. Anything from Holocaust denial, like flat out, or giddiness surrounding it, like why I have reasons to be giddy about the fact that Holocaust happened. I guess that one's non-factual, so in that one you can straight off the bat be non-cordial and worse. But, what are some of these technical views? The private property abolitionists. I'm going to call myself a communist, but specifically speaking, I can best be described as a private property abolitionist, I think. And not just because I simp for the labor theory of value, or I simp for the idea of democracy at the workplace. I just think that workers making decisions and not, managers making decisions. I just think that's so much better. No, but because I believe that, the institution of private property is what's causing all these catastrophes. I'm so glad I spiraled off to this, because this is a tangent to conjoin, all tangents. Truly, the best way to summarize communism is private property abolitionism, and it's why the horseshoe theory fails. There is nothing like private property skepticism, even, in what gets called the far right. And that's why they always have to draw similarities along the lines of some psychological feature or, propensity to zealotry, which is really just, propensity to sociality. The more socially needy you are, the more zealous you're going to be. It's got nothing to do with horseshoe. But there are these horseshoe proponents, and, everywhere they look, every rock they lift, they see more evidence for, the actual far left and far right converge. But just think about private property abolitionism and how there's nothing like even private property skepticism among so much of the far right, not just the economic one. Obviously, the economic one will fetishize private property and say, actually, these guys that are telling you it's the worst thing ever, actually, no, it's the best thing ever, private property. It's like, well, I think it's one of the okay things. Me, the economic centrist. If there's one thing I'm willing to call myself a centrist on, probably if I went issue by issue, it would be economics. I'm a plain old vanilla centrist on at least the kind of economic order that I think works. Because you gotta do the incentive thing, but you also gotta incentivize the lowest of the low from not becoming criminals by giving them enough either handouts or UBI or something that's just... The Randians will never understand that it truly, through taxation, you can lift all boats. Through certain kinds of taxation, Europe proves it. Americans are in denial about it because they want to make it about the blacks. And so sometimes with blacks, welfare is less successful. So that's all Americans who are very hawkish on welfare see. Very Americans who want to fetishize private property. So it's like the far left very often says, not always, but very often says private property is the worst thing ever. It's actually why there's societal calamity. It all traces back to private property. I read Marx. All non-Marxists fail to understand Marx. I'm like, well, how convenient. And then on the opposite end, disproving the horseshoe theory, it's the very people who very often, probably like 70 to 80% of the time, want to tell you private property is not to be fiddled with. Keep the government off my back. Private property is actually the best thing ever. It's the saving grace of human civilization. Proper Randian kind of one-on-one storytelling. But it's far right economically, and the other ones often come along for the ride. So no one should be a private property abolitionist, in case it's not clear. I was just summarizing these views by just spontaneously starting to speak as the proponent. No one should be a private property abolitionist. But I still, despite everything, to this day, I don't really despise communism. I just see nothing in it. And so often the cons, the Reds in America, the Reds who want to hate the other foreign Reds, what used to be called the Reds, but just, the you know, in the worst case, the Bolsheviks, who do deserve, you know, antagonism. But there's many non-Bolshevik communists who just think this would really fix a lot of problems in society. It would save society. And it's like, in many instances, conservatives in America hate that. And I just, or hate them, where it's like, I don't hate comrade. I don't hate people who call other people comrade, but I'm just saying, don't call me comrade. I ain't your comrade. What was the South Park thing? I ain't your buddy, guy. I'm saying, I ain't your comrade, guy. I ain't your comrade, buddy. I just see nothing in what you have to offer in terms of solutions. But no, I don't despise your theory. I think it's a little melodramatic to always fearmonger about the theory and to despise it, and because then you just lose out on the truly insightful commentary, shedding light on why we should all see nothing in that. Society is far more complicated than that vision for a societal fix was, fucking bordering on 2 centuries. You guys got to get over it. You guys got to think. You guys got to think beyond the historical axis. That's what communists also are. They are historicists, though they would deny it. But you have to be a historicist to believe in stages of history, which doctrinaire communism, it's about these stages of history. It's far more kind of stays true to the doctrine than all these people on the far right. The people on the far right play a lot more fast and loose with what's kind of doctrinaire or not, depending on how badly they view the threat. You know, there's kind of some literature in cognitive science, or even cognitive science and psychology complement each other, saying that people who think of themselves, who self-identify as Republicans, they perceive threats at in a much more intense way than Team Blue in America. But yeah, the far left and the far right, you can do a horseshoe theory here. Private property is a very important issue for both camps, and they plainly disagree. The fact that like Glenn Greenwald can get along with Tucker Carlson just shows that their mutual audience is just that stupid. They know what to tiptoe around in all these conversations. Bertrand Russell, seriously, just sit Bertrand Russell down and see how far his camaraderie with Alex Jones goes when the two of them have to just both air their views on private property. Or at least I think. Bertrand Russell. Did I say Bertrand Russell? No, I meant Russell Brand. I think it's time to end this. I meant Russell Brand, in case I said Bertrand Russell all along. God, thank you for hearing out this part where I say it's actually Russell Brand. Russell Bland.
And I have a difficulty when speaking on this subject, especially in the United States, and speaking about the operations and the theoretical background of official...
The audio quality is not my bad for once. The audio quality is the bad of the thing I'm recording for once.
Secrecy in Britain.
For once, I'm blameless.
And the difficulty is simply stated. It's that I can tell, often when I'm talking to American audiences, that they think I must be making at least some of it up. Because
it's that bad in the UK in '88. It's that bad. Oh wait, now the audio quality is my bad. But that's the plane.
It's the merest sketch of the problems of political journalism in Britain insofar as they relate to disclosures of officially held information, do, in fact, have the faculty of...
Secrecy over curiosity and open inquiry because of safety. That's kind of what he's describing. It's secrecy in the UK, and it's so bad. In '88, right? It's so bad that the Yanks don't even believe him. The Yanks think he's making it up.
Rendering the literary efforts of...
But that's what I've heard as well recently, like that the UK has gotten much worse than the US is. I guess, again, comparatively. But then it's like, how could it have gotten so much worse recently when it's like, what is it now? You know, 30 some odd years ago, 36 years ago, it was really bad. But then it's like, how could it have gotten that much worse if 36 years ago it was this bad? That's why I tend to like... I don't know. I tend to just doubt everything when it's a, when it's a wide-reaching narrative. I just doubt it the whole 9 yards.
Of Joseph Heller and Franz Kafka, amateur by contrast. You may have imagined yourself in a slightly fantastic world listening to Mr. MacDonald a moment ago and hearing about...
And yeah, that's the thing with Hitchens debates. It drops just a lot of names that are just no longer names, and so even I'm a little lost.
You may have imagined yourself in a slightly fantastic world listening to Mr. MacDonald a moment ago and
I meant that as Mr. MacDonald, not the Kafka stuff. Mr. MacDonald is just not a name.
Hearing about a mythical American press that doesn't seem to be the same one as gave the Reagan administration a completely free ride on national security at home and abroad and had to play catch-up to the evening edition of a rag in Beirut.
There's probably some exceptions to this that he's omitting.
In order to earn its condemnation.
But probably on the smaller press side. I'm sure a lot of small press in the 80s gave Reagan a lot of flack. It's just the big ones didn't.
From, I think you identified him as your friend, Patrick J.
So, you know, even Hitch had to go to rationality boot camp, but didn't. But it didn't matter back then.
Buchanan. If you think that sort of allegation...
Remember the days, remember the era where there was this narrative that, you know, everyone's too afraid to have Noam Chomsky go on TV because Noam Chomsky was just such a devastating figure, at least in a pocket of, you know, the commentariat. I'm glad those days are over.
About a pretty tame and domesticated press in the United States is fantastic. You have yet to hear the opening periods of my remarks about Fleet Street. I'll start with an example that's both apt in itself and apt in the current climate of glasnost and perestroika. A matter of 5 weeks ago, the British government seized the English edition of the well-known morning newspaper Pravda. They seized this edition and forbade its distribution in the United Kingdom because the Pravda contained an article based on the by now really quite well-known memoirs of Mr. Peter Wright, former employee of MI6 spycatcher. I have a slightly nunc dimittis moment when I read that. I felt rather as I felt when I saw Reagan described as a useful idiot for the Kremlin on Nightline the other night. I felt I've lived long enough to see that said, and I've lived long enough to see Thatcher censoring Pravda in the interests of British national security.
Somehow, there's nothing to it. I guess we're just leaving that absurd a time that, you know, you can kind of put yourself in the late 80s and yes, that would have been, but now it's just another day at the office, Hitch. I'm doing the whole title, What Even Is Right? There's another one, What Even Is Good? But this kind of right, I regret to say, is the very kind of political right that I am scrutinizing here, the sense of an essence to there being a political right that spans some impressive amount of time, as with the left. Could have just as easily been titled, What Even Is Left? But What Even Is Right has that dual, you know, am I talking about what's the right thing to do? In part I am, right? So I have a dual title here again. I'm talking about what I think is the right thing to do, societally even, in the, you know, when I tangent it into taxation, sometimes you can get the tax scheme to be just optimal. It can be optimal inducing by disincentivizing criminality because you have less desperate people. When I said lowest of the low, I meant the inept people, the people who just can't maintain a job. They hate stability maybe even more than I do, but at least I can repress and maintain a job. But like, there's people worse than me. So it's like you, through taxation, you can give them enough to get by and they'll cause less trouble. They may be moochers. But like, if we just had the data that for every moocher, there's 2 or 3 or more would-be criminals that we thwart by giving them freebies, any kind of fiscal, like doggedly fiscal conservative would be wrong to persist that, oh, you know, I guess they might have budgetary concerns. Like, the budgetary concern is technically another layer, but, you know, if it's not about a budgetary thing, it's about a moralized thing. We shan't have freebies in society. Well, like, some of the freebies do more good than bad. So keep the freebies that do more good than bad. Freebies that, if you look at Europe, clearly freebies that, you know, thwart would-be criminals who are less desperate because the freebie. And so UBI is like the freebie. You know, it's you can incorporate it in each individual enough personal responsibility because you're not giving them precise things. You're giving them something that they themselves can spend on, hopefully prudently. Whereas if they didn't have that, they might have been incentivized to, like, they might have been hungry enough or desperate enough or just out of fucks to give enough to become even a violent criminal. But, you know, Thomas Sowell doesn't grapple with that data. But, Thomas Sowell, socialism, we're going to call big government socialism or big welfare spending socialism. And the problem is you run out of people's money. Well, you know what? If we run out of people's money, we run out of people's money. But it seems to have not happened yet. You know, some catastrophe will happen. Well, I guess you can, you know, there's a mini catastrophe with the inflation. So MMT folk have a little pittance to do. But anyway, I'm doing this title in this video called What Even Is Right? It could have just as easily been What Even Is Left. Here's the What Even Is Good record, again, in case you missed it. It's a very good record. But I'm also talking about, you know, what makes sense to do. So it's also what even is the right thing to do. So I like those. I like those titles. But it's also a bit cheeky because I know exactly I know exactly how to answer that question. What even is right? The kind of political right. And I'm saying this distinction doesn't make much difference. But if you just squint really hard and you want to make it seem like it's a meaningful split, that kind of deep worldview split, then how can we answer the question, well, what even is right, the political right? And the most consistent answer to this, the right is the thing that gets in the left's way. So as per the placement of this audio, I'm going to pretend that I just did that thing, which you just heard me do, but it's actually been a couple of days, but I just thought something more to add. But let's just pretend I just did that thing, and this is the follow-up audio where I once again explain why the left-right thing, though sticky, is nonetheless mistaken. The whole thing is mistaken as a framework. That's why the horseshoe thing can't help but be a mistake, because it's modeling itself as an antagonist to a mistake in the wrong kind of way by making it about these psychological features, instead of just asking people, what kind of constitution do you like and why do you like it? Or what kind of policy package do you like and why do you like it? So I just did that thing, but I want to add to it here. Let's pretend that I'm actually wrong about that. And this has been sticky for a reason. So I'm wrong about that, and then someone convinces me that I'm actually wrong about that. And now, having been convinced that I was wrong about all that, and that the left and the right is really meaningful, and this is one way to sketch out, you know, good and bad. And, you know, now I believe that this is not just a way to sketch out even party affiliation divides, but no, it goes deeper. There's these theories. You know, and one theory, broadly speaking, is right. Like, I can try to Thomas Sowell this. I'm going to sneakily argue that one theory is really right by portraying the other theory falsely, like the dreamers and the realists. That was like essentially that was Thomas Sowell's way of splitting red and blue. Blue were too much of a dreamer kind of party, right? So Thomas Sowell clearly believes in this, and he's very respected. So therefore, a lot of other people really believe in this. And let's say those people actually convinced me that I'm wrong and that this divide is meaningful beyond party affiliation. There's a worldview clash here. Of all the worldview clashes, there's a left-right worldview clash. That's the essence of the clash. And so now I believe this. And now I look at like my recent stuff on here. I look at natalism as collective FOMO, and I look at nationalism as assembly line camaraderie. And like, what am I doing? What am I doing on YouTube? Well, I'm pounding the right. Now I believe in left and right as a meaningful worldview clash. So like, I've been let's say indoctrinated to believe it. They've somehow successfully indoctrinated me, and now I believe it. And so like, what am I doing on YouTube? Oh shit, I've been pounding the right. Crowd gets to make his debut.
Culture.
Crowd.
One of the most revealing moments of this topic for me personally was when I was a student. I learned back then that there are entire libraries of history, anthropology, and political science papers written throughout the 1960s and 1980s on how there supposedly exists a tyrannical Eastern European culture. That Eastern European culture supposedly creates subservience to authority, and that therefore Eastern Europeans will never overthrow communism, and even if communism ends, Eastern European culture will just create new tyrannical systems of rule under which the supposedly culturally subservient Poles, Lithuanians, and Czechs will then live. Papers like these stopped being written after the Berlin Wall collapsed. It is for this reason why, especially since the 1990s,
I was worried there.
Active push, especially in German academia, to stop using the term Eastern Europe as a categorization. It's why the institutes of Eastern European studies are starting to disappear and being renamed to Institutes of Slavic Studies, and why you can now also study things like Finno-Ugristic studies or Baltic study.
Well, fellow Slavs, do consult the record Slavs Killing Slavs for an actual issue in terms of where the problems with Slavs are right now. Slavs killing Slavs in major droves since February 2022. Them's the issue. This kind of stuff rings a lot like, you know, hang on, let me play a few more seconds and then you'll see what it rings like. But the actual Slav problems are not that it was called Slavic studies instead of Baltic studies. I think that's just a rendition of a certain other kind of commentary that starts with W and ends with E. But it's too rare now for people to catch on that it's got the same issues. It happens too rarely now.
Is separately The University of Vienna was actually a pioneer in this, because after the Hungarian uprising of 1956 and the Prague Spring of 1968, many Hungarian, then Czech, and then Polish dissidents fled from communist tyranny to Vienna, lived here, and also began working and educating here, like the late Polish philosophy professor Krzysztof Michalski, an important figure in the building of the Polish Institute of Vienna. You may see this as a side note, but I think it is important to understand this. The reason why we, in Western Europe, increasingly began abandoning the concept of Eastern Europe is not because Western academics suddenly had a moment of enlightenment in which they realized by themselves that they were wrong. No, it is because Hungarian, Polish, Czech, and Slovak poets, playwrights, philosophers, and historians came here and basically told us.
Can I play John McWhorter in this West mistreats other groups rendition of commentary? Or how did I put it? This is actually a community post. Oh, can I play John McWhorter in this Slav Lives Matter? It was Slav Lives Matter. Rendition of West mistreats other groups commentary. I've got the same much ado over nothing pushback. I can't play armchair linguist though. No, that's not the static. That's me LARPing as static, because I wanted an extended static, because this is the only record part of this video, and the clip that follows mentions a record. Apart from that, there's no records in here, so just pretend it's actual static, but kind of a bit longer and less convincingly static. What else can I say about the upcoming clip? I guess not much. It's just that, you know, I may do some faces, kind of the big inspirations by faces in the way of Slavs killing Slavs, because that's the record. I bring it back to Slavs killing Slavs, because they're still doing it. For the first mention of Slavs killing Slavs, consult the Make the Facts Dance video. There, it's a lot about this. It's a lot about the Jew-Muslim thing, and then it's also kind of me comparing it in a first-person context, you know, having grown up seeing a lot of this Slavs killing Slavs stuff. But anyway, this is just a static intermission. Now these will be retitled.
Oh, anything else about them? It's like, they think this is the best way of
it will be retitled.
being a decent human online? These are all zealots.
These are all zealots. It's like, if I still did voicemails, I remember I was just drabby in my old voicemails, but like if I did the voicemail thing right now, I would go, these are all zealots. I would just play this excerpt. These are all zealots after the beep.
I think I'm done.
Yeah, I think I'm done. That's a catchphrase and a half, and a good kind of voicemail. Hey, you're probably a zealot, but I guess I'll hear you out anyway. Now I'm thinking about fam, kind of my fam. My zealous, dishonest fam that always leaves me voicemails asking for money. A certain kind of fam member leaving me voicemails asking for money. These are money zealots. You know, I'm awfully critical of David Frum when I think about these dumb tweets, but that's really the worst of the worst. I should say something in defense of why I still keep tabs on him, and it's mostly to do with his history. So here's something like a 25-year-old clip. This is on the Charlie thing. Charlie Rose. I mix up my Charlies. I mixed up Charlie Kirk and Charlie Sykes, and now I hope to not mix up Mr. Charlie Rose, who has been, you know, this is one of these, he make the kind of comeback Kevin Spacey made. But anyway, this is like a 25-year-old interview. It's about Barry Goldwater, and it's from on Charlie Rose's show. Charlie Rose is asking about the term conservatism and what Barry Goldwater did, and what credit do conservatives owe to Barry Goldwater. And this is kind of why I still think Frum is worth listening to, especially in these old, interesting clips, 2+ decade old clips. You know, it gets at what I talked about in terms of the party affiliation being distinct. Frum has a very in-depth knowledge of American history, 19th century, 20th century, the whole 9 yards, and it shows here. This is, you know, this is something that very few people know in terms of just how indebted conservatives should be to Barry Goldwater for losing in '64. Frum explains it brilliantly. Listen.
Does those who believe in conservatism owe to Barry Goldwater? Immense. It was not at all clear in 1964 that conservatism was going to go inside the Republican Party. It could have formed a third party. It could have attached itself to some dissident elements in the Democratic Party. It was Barry Goldwater who fused conservatism and republicanism together. And if it hadn't been for that, I think the Republican Party would have been far weaker.
It was also that fusionism thing where a bunch of different, the paleocons, the neocons, the quote-unquote libertarians all came together. Come together right now to fight the commies. Fusionism. But yeah, you know, spearheaded. It was already in swing by that point, but you can say in another sense, Barry Goldwater's law spearheaded Republican kind of conservatism in the States.
And the conservative movement far weaker.
And without Barry Goldwater, no Ronald Reagan.
And without Barry Goldwater's loss, no Ronald Reagan.
There we go.
You know, ironically, I think that it could be said that Barry Goldwater's greatest service to conservatism was his defeat. He did two important things in '64. He put issues on the table that nobody had ever dared discuss before, but that we now take for granted. The government should get out of the electric utility business. The government shouldn't be regulating the price of trucking and trains and airplanes, and that Social Security is going to have to be reformed in ways that give individuals more of a separate stake in their
perfectly reasonable positions, mind you.
Pension.
It was heresy in 1964 and today.
You know, I'd like more wiggle room in terms of the Canadian pension plan. I'd like more wiggle room. I don't think I need to be pretty much strong-armed into being told that I ought to believe those will be my golden years. If I want to opt out at 65 or, you know, even before, and thus not really make much use of my pension plan, I should have some wiggle room to opt out.
It's part of the dialogue.
Today, it's either done, as with the deregulation of trucking, or part of the dialogue.
Yeah.
And the second thing, service he did, of course, was to lose, because the world was not ready for those ideas in 1964. And I think had Goldwater, by some miracle, been elected and tried to put them in place, the result would have been a disaster. And as it
I think he's talking about the racial stuff.
Was, he set in motion a chain of events that have led to the conservative ascendancy in America after 1980.
And probably...
So this was 25 years ago, but very much informative for today's scene as well. I'll link to the full thing. So here's how you can tell what you just saw was a 2023 recording. On the one hand, you can tell because it's in my old place, but it might be too dark to tell that it's the old place. But the way you can tell it's an older recording, certainly not anything recent, it's that I just end the recording and I don't make any joke. There's no levity. There's no gag. It's just kind of, I think that I'm justified in recording the Lappy and not making it into a gag recording. Whereas I don't remember the last time I did that. Like, if I'm recording the damn Lappy, I have to make it, somehow I try to squeeze out a gag out of it. But back then I didn't. I'm just like, oh, let's do just an informative laptop record. It's like, no. So that's how you can tell it's an old one. And I guess this being an audio, there's no pressure for me to do anything here. I can just end it on the most lackluster note, and it's okay, because you're not seeing my laptop. If you're seeing my laptop, you should have been now Pavlovian doggy style trained to expect it to be something. But now it's just an audio. I may do like a fuck you graphic even, just to kind of bolster my own lackluster end to this audio. So I used opt out in an ambiguous way here that could be interpreted. Well, opting out of what exactly? Opting out of life or opting out of having to be in the pension plan? I meant the pension plan.
Security is going
because the whole opting out of life thing should go without saying.
Have to be reformed in ways that give individuals more of a separate stake in their
perfectly reasonable positions, mind you.
Pension.
It was heresy in 1964 and today.
You know, I'd like more wiggle room in terms of the Canadian pension plan. I'd like more wiggle room. I don't think I need to be pretty much strong-armed into being told that I ought to believe those will be my golden years. If I want to opt out at 65 or, you know, even... Yeah, so there's the one time I meant, like, opt out as in just opt out of life, whether that's by my own hand or through some sort of Dignitas Switzerland thing. But then associated with that is, prior to that, if I want to opt out of my CPP precisely because I know I won't be utilizing, because that's like retirement age around here, mid-60s, late 60s, shuffles up and down. It doesn't really shuffle much, but it's expected to shuffle given certain fiscal cliffs. And so, yeah, I think Goldwater had it right. I think From Here has it kind of right too by implying that Goldwater was right about that. These are perfectly sensible positions. And yeah, to opt out at life at 65, the kind of associated opt-out thing, or whatever, you know, even 70, there's a kind of associated opting out thing, and it means that, well, these guys are going to kind of force me to pay into a pension plan, most of which I don't want to utilize, because I don't want to be around for that long. Because I don't want to be around wearing adult diapers. Ooh, can't wait to post my 2023 rants about the the adult diaper wearing people who they'll settle for just about everything. But that's a separate video. This is just to point out, here I meant at 65 out of life, but it is implied from that therefore I should also want to opt out of just a pension plan that kicks in too late. That's the problem. If it kicked in at 55, okay, maybe at 55 you can say you got another decent year left, but at 65, yeah. And yeah, I've finally started editing this one, so no more raw files. Oh, I think you will see some raw files. I think I'll return to the raw files later in this video, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite. And yeah, new laptop equals new software. Things go faster now. Laptop is not prone to freezing, finally.
Restoring nature to its natural state is a cause beyond party and beyond factions. It has become a common cause of all the people of this country. It is a cause of particular concern to young Americans, because they, more than we, will reap the grim consequences of our failure to act on programs which are needed now if we are to prevent disaster later.
Sounds like alarmism.
Clean air, clean water, open spaces, these should once again be the birthright of every American. If we act now, they can be. We still think of air as free, but clean air is not free.
It's the air moochers.
And neither is clean water. The price tag of pollution control is high. Through our years of past carelessness, we incurred a debt to nature, and now that debt is being called. The program I shall propose to Congress will be the most comprehensive and costly program in this field in America's history. It is not a program for just 1 year. A year's plan in this field is no plan at all. This is a time to look ahead, not a year, but 5 years or 10 years, whatever time is required to do the job.
A 5-year plan to control us through climate alarmism and, false tales of a grim future. You just want control, like all leftists.
I shall propose to this Congress a $10 billion nationwide clean waters program.
You just want control, and you just want to run out of people's money, like all leftists.
Municipal waste treatment plants in every place in America where they are needed to make our waters clean again, and do it now.
If people wanted clean water and air and all that stuff, they'd act organically and emergently, and it would happen. But it's about control for you.
We have the industrial capacity, if we begin now, to build them all within 5 years. This program will get them built within 5 years. As our cities and suburbs...
I mean, it is a bit odd. At the peak of the 5-year plan mockery thing, he kind of just says 5-year plans.
...relentlessly expand. Those priceless open spaces needed...
But yeah, I mean, I've made my point. What even is right?
...for recreation areas accessible to their people are swallowed up, often forever. Unless we preserve these spaces while they are still available, we will have none to preserve. Therefore, I shall propose new financing methods for purchasing open space and park lands now, before they are lost to us.
Or, what even is right over time? Yeah, I should have titled it maybe, what even is right over time, but I don't want to make titles too long. It's got to be snappy.
The automobile is our worst polluter of the air. Adequate control requires further advances in engine design and fuel composition. We shall intensify our research, set increasingly strict standards, and strengthen enforcement procedures, and we shall do it now.
Man, look at it go. Look at it go. Pop quiz, what's the one thing that's more amusing than hearing me LARP ass static? 3, 2, 1. It's actually seeing the static. Or it's just extra agreeable because I'm smoking the good stuff. As you should be too, smoking the good stuff, and it's green. I'm proud of that which I do not click, and I want to brag about it. I'm proud of that which I do not click. See, a second ago, I'm like, let's crop it and do an audio about it, but I'm like, why? Mid-crop, I'm like, let's brag about that which I know I have the willpower to not click, and let's also kind of make the video seem like it's overall more recent than it really is. Because this is kind of one of these last-minute things throw in. Yeah, the video really is that recent, right? Most of this video really is that recent. I fucking wish. But anyway, this is just one of my quick brags about, maybe I'll crop it and do, because see, then I have to worry about the edges, but when it's a lappy recording, I never have to worry about the edges. Not leaving the edges blank for things that just do not stretch. So that's why I've kind of taken to these. So of course, it's when I said economics, gosh, I said I'm a centrist on economics. No, I'm a centrist on distributive justice. And you'll see me wave there and do whatever I do at my own expense. But here, just to say, this is one of these things I know not to click, and I have the willpower increasingly to not click. And ooh, ain't the video recent because the Iranian president's dead. Look at it go. I think I'll title you, I Shan't Feed Morgenborg. Look at it go.
They're racist or homophobic.
Here I bring you the best of Destiny. I bring you the best of Destiny. Aren't you glad I sifted through all this so I can bring you these kind of once or twice a video?
Because in your world, the hatred runs so deep, it's intractable.
Yeah. Crystal's lipstick just fell over. That's all it was.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Some bits of that narrative actually were kind of like close to
I'm going to let this run for like a minute.
Reality, but just let me fix a couple of things for you.
It really, no, you're not going to fix anything. It's about displaying his psychology. Here, all cards on table. He didn't want to, but all cards ended up on table thanks to Destiny.
First of all, if you're saying that a precondition for lifting the siege is that Hamas has to not be in power anymore, you have that backwards. The occupation of Gaza existed before Hamas was created. The occupation created Hamas.
Wait, what?
It's the psychology, stupid, with all of them.
And therefore, the blockade wasn't since the occupation.
Yeah, I mean, the occupation itself needed to end. They replaced the occupation with the siege. That's what they did. And
no, the blockade started like 2005.
Yeah,
we're not debating politics with them. We're not debating strategy. We're debating their psychology. We, as in people like him, who are maybe a little too pro-Israel, but who nonetheless have their shining moments, as he's about to display.
So they withdrew.
But yeah, we're not debating rational. Positive sum game, positive sum stuff types. No, this is negative sum because this is about, it's psychological, stupid.
It's been occupied since 48.
It remains. No, Gaza has been occupied since 1967.
Gaza's been occupied since 1948.
I will never let I don't care if this is pedantic, I will never let anybody get away with this fucking point. I will never, ever, ever let anybody, I hate this point, and I will never let anybody get away with this fucking point. It drives me crazy.
48.
It remains. No, Gaza has been occupied since 1967.
Gaza's been occupied since 1948.
What are you talking about? Israel took over Gaza in 1967.
Who took over in 1948?
The Egyptians did.
Yes, so it was occupied by the Egyptians.
This is the...
I know you don't like to talk about that because it's not convenient, but that's true. It wasn't a Palestinian state.
Who cares? The point is...
Who cares? The Palestinians were. They had a fake government for 1 year that was recalled to Cairo and immediately disbanded. Then they became a training ground for Fetty.
It's the psychology, stupid.
You weren't allowed to leave the Gaza Strip from 48 to 67 either. You were also locked in there by the Egyptians.
But them's kind of my fam. It's kind of near to my fam, so it's okay.
He then called for an end to the Egyptian occupation of Gaza too. Oh wait, it ended. Great. So now let's talk about these.
Things turn groupier is one of the tracks, and yes, they do.
The occupation of Gaza. It started...
Or no, not in their case. In their case, it was always this groupie.
1967, it has continued, and all Israel did is withdraw settlers out of Gaza and replace...
Okay, so I think the entertainment part ends. Thanks for watching.
But then Hamas tried to do the Palestinians tried to the West Bank a few years later, right after they announced their unity government.
It's great that you've done some reading and you can throw out random factoids. But
I love... Why does he get to say this to...
I want his speed, but not really.
Okay? Just because I know everything you're talking about doesn't mean you can dismiss my knowledge. He tried to conflate the two events, okay? When you talk about the...
Yeah, maybe the entertainment part is done, but here and there, you know, you got these. You got these spasms. But this is definitely worth the whole thing. This one's uniquely good.
The attempted coup of Hamas, that was in the Gaza Strip.
But I can't waste video time.
With all of the thoroughness that you like to employ in this research, can you say for certain that sugar and sodas are then processed to extract the sugar?
You'll have to believe me, but it is actually politically relevant for what they're discussing. Bomb making and missile making and such.
Cookies and soda, sorry. Are they used to process the sugar out of them and then used to make rockets?
Now, I'm playing this because this is relevant because now I get like why Seinfeld did so well. He does well for the same reason Seinfeld did well.
As my understanding, that was the rationalization for the blockading sugar-based products going to the Gaza.
And it's not a lowest common denominator kind of point I'm making. No, I don't think that audience is lowest common denominator. I just think Seinfeld's overrated. But Seinfeld's not bad. It's just I just didn't get how it was just that much of a phenomenon globally too.
Did you look to see if that was rational?
I mean, of all the reruns, you know, it's just, Seinfeld still makes most bank.
Did you look to see if that's actually possible?
That was the stated reason.
Let me go back a bit.
That was my understanding. That was the rationalization.
Are then processed to extract the sugar. Cookies and soda, sorry. Are they used to process the sugar out of them and then used to make rockets?
That was my understanding. That was the rationalization for the blockading sugar-based products going to the Gaza Strip.
Did you look to see if that was rational? Did you look to see if that's actually possible?
Products like these.
That was the stated reason for the blockade.
Like these. Oh,
that's
builder.
No, you don't do that because
I'm a builder. This thing's like 90% jam-packed sugar, but you know it tells you you're a builder.
You like
Hang on, sorry.
The sugar. For certain that sugar and sodas are then processed to extract the sugar. Cookies and soda, sorry. Are they used to process the sugar out of them and then used to make rockets?
That was my understanding. That was the rationalization for the blockading sugar-based products going to the Gaza Strip.
Did you look to see if that was rational? Did you look to see if that's actually possible?
That was the stated reason for the blockade.
That's what was... No, you don't do that because you like to verify everything that's stated. So did you not look into that and see if they can actually pull sugar from that to actually be used as a compound in these rockets?
No, why? Can they not?
Yeah, see, intuitively, I'd go, yeah, that is weird. Why would I expect that they'd be able to do that?
No, that's my whole point, though. You don't have the answer to that, and you
Hold on, wait. Then the response should be in a debate to me. Oh, but Destiny, you weren't even able to do that. Nobody's even brought that argument up.
No. I'm coming to you and saying, why didn't you look into that?
Because
enter Seinfeld vibes.
Because my basic understanding of chemistry is that extracting sugar from food products is probably a pretty simple process. That'd be my guess. From the little bit I remember of chemistry, I don't think it's incredibly complicated.
Because when it gets cooked, it gets caramelized. It's no longer sugar. I think it would be a very intense process to get a pure sugar out of these products.
Does it need to be pure sugar?
I mean, when you saw the video that you were watching, they were using actual sugar.
I don't know where that sugar came from. They didn't pour it out of a bag. I don't know if they got this from something else.
Bleached.
So it couldn't have come from anything else? I have no idea. Can you...
It's IRL Seinfeld online.
Can you get sugar out of cookies? Chemistry experiment.
But everyone does searches. And there's no calling laugh track.
It's the sugar, but I'm worried about the ratio of dry ingredients to wet. I want to change too much. I don't know. Oh, reduce the sugar just means...
Actually, you know what? Seinfeld's not charming at all without the banjo. Why did I say banjo? It was never a banjo. This is the only banjo-related stuff that comes up. I dare not click it, but no, what they actually used was... Wolf didn't use a bass at all. Instead, a fairly basic slap bass setting on a so-and-so synthesizer. It was never a banjo. It's frightening that me, as the music-loving guy, and I really am, but nonetheless, my long-term memory just completely flops when it comes to the recollection of, like, what's what. Hopefully, when it's just a long-term thing, a thing that I hadn't heard in a long time. Yeah, ashamed of that one. But anyway, I guess I am wasting video time, but nonetheless, returning to where I ended off, I just had to correct the banjo thing. It was not. It was this synthesizer thing. But yeah, it had a good vibe, and maybe I'll get adventurous and play these. But no, I have to conserve time. But it wasn't any such thing, and it took this fucking search to have enough balls to confirm it.
Because reduce the sugar, but I'm worried about the ratio of dry ingredients to wet. I want to change too much.
Why are there so many things at the end of? You know what? I just might prefer the galling laugh track to the chat. All chat.
Oh, reduce the sugar just means getting rid of the sugar.
Yeah. Even those really buzzy laugh tracks where the applause would be like after every second joke, even those might be better than the chat. The thrilling conclusion, what he thinks might
candy
be...
Rocket candy is a type of rocket propellant for model rockets made with a form of sugar as fuel. Does this tell you how you get the sugar out?
God, it's not even scientifically, even I intuit things better than you. Obviously wouldn't tell you. Rocket candy can't tell you how you get the sugar out of something like a soft drink. It's not about what it goes into, like rockets. Oh wait, did I get that right? I think I got that right. I think he's confused. Like, why would it? It's intuitively clear. Even to the scientifically quasi-literate, it's intuitively clear, right? Back me up. Like, it should be intuitively clear to him.
You can go and research this and tell me if it's completely impossible.
I'm just curious why you felt so...
Go do your own research.
So confident saying that that's the reason without verifying...
Wait, hold on, because I haven't verified every single...
saying that that's the reason without verifying.
Wait, hold on. Because I haven't verified every single underlying aspect of chemistry? Like, what's next? What if I say, oh, well, it looks like you can get the sugar out if you do this process. What's your next question? And like, oh, well, did you know if they even had the machines to do that in the guys?
I heard him say something about being on certain kinds of meds and dealing with anxiety. Dude, just output less. It's okay. I guess you like the limelight, kid. He's just a couple years younger. God. But just like, seriously, just go easy. Every time I see something in the algorithm now, it's a few hours ago and it's brand spanking new. And
you can get the verified every single
no, you're doing this too much in your life. Like, I get it. You like the chat. You like your chat. I get it. It must be fun to like one's chat, but you're doing a lot to yourself. The output is cray. And plus, you're making me feel lazy.
You said as much as yourself.
Someone would say extracting pure sugar out of cookies is near impossible.
Yep, that's like it. You can argue with them later. I'm watching this, okay?
Oh, God. It went on, too. And now 2 seconds of this. And
2 hour thing on this.
You said as much as...
It's as if it's pre-planned.
Yourself.
Because it's such a vibe. It's that kind of best of sitcom vibe. They bring things back.
Someone would say extracting pure sugar out of cookies is near impossible.
Yep, that's like it. You can argue with them later. I'm watching this, okay?
I wish people spoke like this IRL, in this TV kind of way. IRL in my life, it just never happens here.
I don't need a 2 hour thing on this. I love you, though.
No, it's not even that. No, it's you can do that within a day.
Okay, well, much ado for nothing. But if that extremely smug-looking guy was right, that means that my intuitions were wrong. So I was wrong, and his intuitions were right. If this guy...
No, you can do that within a day.
So I can't just skip over this. If he's right, then I was wrong. And consequently, Destiny was right.
Okay,
well, much ado for nothing. Oh, I can't just say much ado for nothing. It means I was wrong. It's kind of a big deal. So, like, even within my own video, like, Destiny scores a point against me. Can you imagine if I didn't have creative control, how many more points he would score against me? This was just my intuition. I thought I miscalculated whether or not, once they're in rockets, the sugar was, whether it had to be caramelated or not before, or can it be caramelated and then redone into sugar? That whole thing, my intuition was wrong. I can't jump over that.
You said as much as yourself.
Yeah,
Someone would say extracting pure sugar out of cookies.
This whole thing, I can't skip over it. Like, even in my own video, Destiny scores a point against me. Oh, God, I really shouldn't. But at least I know that you're one of the culprits. You're one of the deceivers, aren't you? I'm starting to think that you were a deceiver all along. But at least you're good for rockets. As with the rest of you are also good for rockets. Because you say you have 0 sugar, but it's false, hence the gag. Healthy, non-healthy. Healthy, non-healthy. Healthy, non-healthy. Kind of healthy, but maybe middle of the road with other stuff. But yeah, healthy, non-healthy. Shrooms. Self-incrimination. Healthy, non-healthy. Healthy, non-healthy. So, a quite adept summary of the Jew-Muslim thing by Destiny in reference to Norm's mind, but quite adept. Listen.
This is what Finkelstein does, and this is why Israel-Palestine is perfectly suited for a mind like his. You read a thing, and if it agrees with your side, you stop, and you agree with it. If you read a thing and it doesn't, then you go one level deeper. If that agrees with your side, then you stop and then you're done. And with Israel-Palestine, you can always go one level deeper, so you can always build...
You can, it's true. And a lot of issues that have these global implications, there's just too many damn levels. Every little aspect, every little intricacy has yet another level. It's kind of like economics.
Whatever narrative that you want.
Yeah.
So in his particular case, the IDF says, oh, we attacked people that we thought were terrorists. Oh, did you? And then you look it up. Aha, 4 children were killed. No, you killed children. But if you go another level deeper, well, what actually happened? These children came out of a place. They were in shipping containers that was previously identified.
And so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. Let's see here. I'm a builder. Oh, these make you a builder. No, what I am is a fat piece of shit who, early on at least, falls for quirky advertising. I guess these don't say builder, do they? Most of the time when I see something like this, it says builder on it. Energy bar. It's like, no, it's jam-packed with the stuff that I intuited wrong after all, as you just found out. So I intuited it wrong. Even though I don't know if that last guy was right, the guy who popped in and said, someone say you can't get sugar out of cookies. But yeah, this is just to kind of emphasize, I'm just addicted to sugary crap. And as long as they put in stuff like that, you know, for all my screeds against advertising, it's like, well, I'm gonna feel slightly less bad for buying this many and munching on this many, especially when I get the munchies from you know what. That yeah, all my, you know, screeds against advertising out the window because it tells me I'm a builder of sorts. But yeah, I'll eat crow on saying Destiny has bad scientific intuitions. I guess I'm the one who has bad scientific intuitions. I don't really feel that bad about it though, because I always knew I had bad scientific intuitions. Blessed be gluttony, this shall be gone in minutes. Let's take a few seconds to see what are some of these other tabs here that I got going on. So this is just as arbitrary as it gets, but nonetheless, I feel like sharing what I'm into. So I was never into this till year and a half ago, but every single one of these, for when you're smoking the good stuff, every single one of these, whatever they're called, they'll have the word dark in it sometimes, industrial, post-industrial, but if you see synth, if you see minimal and cold, you know you're in good company. I want to play it, but you know, it might be copyright, even though it's decades old, so I don't want to risk anything. I've been burned before. I don't want to risk anything. Moving on. This is yet another translation of Shab. The reader's good.
Simplest assertion of the will to live is only the assertion of one's own body.
Yeah, the reader's good, but I can't quite pin the translation. Is it the one I dislike? It's certainly not the one I like, but is it the one I dislike? Is it the newer one? I can't quite pin it down. But yeah, it's very recent by kind of the whole freaking book uploaded by this Simon Gross guy. So a lot of the stuff is on. Mr. Robert Wright, I should at some point put him on the list where I like devote a chunk of the video to him. Because he's just so, I think he thinks he's high-minded for discussing foreign affairs stuff 90% of the time. You know, 80-90% of the time. And kind of making assertions and drawing real kind of core, not surface level lines, but really kind of deep worldview lines along the lines of assessments of what ought to be done. And should we be, you know, idealists versus realists? And he carves out a kind of space that's neither side, but kind of leans realist. And he really thinks that this is what the smartest of the smart people ought to be talking about. And they always have to have strong views. Like he calls the foreign policy establishment the blob. And it's really important to understand that he's right about the blob. And these are kind of things that we have these are the kinds of things that we can have knowledge of if we just do enough reading, whether the blob ruins everything or whether, you know, things just are kind of self-ruinous because the world sucks. He's this Buddhist who doesn't get that the world's just going to suck no matter what, whether there's a blob or whether there's not a blob. He's also a Buddhist who sarcastically says things like, oh, also the elimination of all life, like whatever, through, you know, thermonuclear warfare. It's not just that things are going to be really bad, but, oh, you know, I'm just going to sarcastically kind of point out that we kind of keep going down this road. Oh, it'll be lifeless from now on. You know, but he's a Buddhist, but he's here fretting, being a part of the collective FOMO people, even though he writes a book called Why Buddhism is True. But then it's like, oh, people are forgetting. You know, this kind of life going extinct thing, it's so obviously bad that I'm going to sarcastically point to it as something that everyone should be worried about, but at the same time, I'm a Buddhist. But, you know, most commentary is this, you know, strong opinion foreign policy thing. But Coleman in this edition just points out at one point, it's like, most of what we can know in terms of what the right and wrong thing to do was, most of what can be known will only be known in retrospect. And he just lets it slide. But it's like Coleman just dissed your, like, 80 to 90% of your commentary by saying, like, you're jumping the gun by having really strong views about what ought to be done in the present. So often we can only know these things in retrospect. And Coleman kind of pointed it out as an aside, and he just kind of let it slide. It's called A Debate on Israel-Palestine. It was a good conversation. It really was. Yeah, see what I'm talking about with Destiny. Like, Destiny is just everywhere, because all of this stuff is freaking new. He's a workhorse. But Mr. Robert Wright has to understand, has to accept what Coleman said here as just an aside in the conversation. And that is, like, a lot of the stuff you want to be strongly opinionated on, Robert, we can only have a justified view when it's a kind of hindsight 2020 thing. Otherwise, it's a lot of this guesswork stuff that you're stupid enough to think. I'm sorry, Robert. You're stupid enough to think that, like, if the blob just goes away, like the Brinkman, most of the brinkmanship will go away. As a Buddhist, you think humans can get this right often enough were it not for the blob, the foreign policy American establishment. Robert, you gotta let it go. We just don't know. It's too chaotic to have the predictive force, this foreign policy stuff. It's too fucking chaotic. It's 18D chess. Something like that. But no, he wants to talk about how it's like, oh, it's the blob. The blob just makes it so much worse. I don't know, Bob, if the blob makes it that much worse. Look at all this third worldist crap. That certainly ain't the blob. The binary split, the binary worldview split, where it's the colonizers versus the colonized. Yeah, that ain't the blob, but that's intensely irrational and delusional. And it sucker punches your stupid narratives. Okay, I'm done. Oh, and the last thing, right, the last thing. I kind of went back to Wiki because I was talking about property in that video. And so I went back to Wiki, and this is, what is the title? Women and Ownership. Oops, I mean Property and Ownership. I'm reading retro again.
Only with the cooperation of the Congress can we meet this highest priority objective.
Whoopsie. Look at it go. God, the bit would have been so much better. I gotta do a self-own kind of thing with the graphics here when I highlight own. The bit would have been so much better. The bit was still worth doing, but I had to kind of visually correct that it's SEP. It's not. I'm going to have to take a self-dig before this punchline. A self-dig at myself because I was on the SEP, not Wiki. I said Wiki. I self-owned, which could have been a glorious end to the video. It still might. I can just play this at the beginning of whatever other video where I say Wiki instead of SEP. And that's kind of almost ruined a bit. Because if I do something visually, it'll distract from the punchline. So no, I'm just gonna let it slide. I'm going to deliver that line. I'm not going to put anything on the screen correcting that I said Wiki instead of SEP. Because I went to SEP when I read out Women and Ownership. And oops, I did it again. Ooh, what else does that remind you of? Why might they have been property? Oops, she's doing it again. I just hope she doesn't die before I release my one of the upcoming gender videos where I go off on her. I go off on, oops, I did it again. And so it's women in ownership. Like, should she be owned again? She seems to be self-scandaling her way back into ownership. But no, I did not mean to give this spoiler for what a certain video, what kind of risque content a certain upcoming video will cover. I did not mean for this to be spiraling into a Brit tangent. I just meant to say, I said Wiki, and I'm not going to graphically take shots at myself as that happens. There'll be no smirking, giggling Pepe. As I say, Wiki is SEP now in a tag. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to explain it here. I meant to say SEP. Baby, bye. Babe, I can do this. I can do it. Baby Needs Daddy. That's the next project. Baby Needs Daddy.